Hello there, friends and enemies, and welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan-Made Mechanics. I have the camera where it is so that I'm blocking up a bunch of Discord names so nobody goes and adds people on Discord. This is going to be the final Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan-Made Mechanics that I am going to make, but I have something fun coming up in the future, so don't be too sad. Also, this week's video was supposed to be Master Duel Champion 2013, but c'est la vie, as they say. This is the Lionheart King wiki. It is a wiki that is full of user-submitted, fan-made summoning mechanics. Obviously, it's just summoning mechanics, so it's not going to be like, you know, different types of spell cards or trap cards or anything like that. It's just going to be related to monsters, but I figured this would be a fun place to lead. There are a couple of Lionheart King summoning mechanics that I enjoy, so let's take a look at those. Starting us off, we have King Summoning, King cards. So how to King Summon: during the main phase, the turn player can activate a King card on a spell or trap zone and unlock a number of King monster zones, depending on the King card's King hierarchy. Then the player can special summon monsters from the extra deck to any of the unlocked King monster zones. That the player can do this multiple times per turn as long as the combined King hierarchy of multiple kings doesn't go over 5. I think that's fun and interesting. Of course, there are a bunch of alternate versions of King summoning here, but we will go ahead and take a look at a King monster. Unfortunately, this is the biggest that I can get it. I'm going to try not to go over the little box here, but here we have Pendulum of Worlds. It has a little symbol over there ×2. I'm going to assume that that's its hierarchy ranking. It's also got a little continuous over there. I assume that... Actually, you know what? I'm realizing that these said that they were monsters, but I don't think that they are monsters. I think they are like versions of spell and trap cards, so that's cool. I do like the art for the card. It looks like it's a little bit photoshopped, which I'm cool with. It looks fun. I enjoy it. So let's get into it. Pay 2,000 life points, target up to 2 pendulum monsters from your face-up extra deck or graveyard and place them in your pendulum zones. Also, during your next 2 turns after this card's activation, you can special summon monsters from your graveyard whose levels are within your pendulum scales. This is treated as a pendulum summon. During your second end phase after this card's activation, destroy this card. Okay, I enjoy this card. If I'm being honest, I like this card. I don't know how I feel about King Summoning quite yet, although limiting it to 5 hierarchy seems like it would kind of make it so that you can make powerful King cards and not make them be crazy overpowered for the game, right? Taking a look here, I like this card. I think this card is rad, actually. You use up a Pendulum Summon, of course, but you get to Pendulum Summon monsters from your graveyard, which is awesome. And, you know, it doesn't stay around too long. You don't get to do that forever. It stays around for 2 turns, including the turn that you bring it out. So I think I like this card. If I'm being honest, I enjoy this card so much. This is so cool. I don't know how King cards would work in the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like this card could be cool, but I feel like it would have to do with a Pendulum deck. I think sort of like, what are they called? There's the new Pendulum deck that's got like the Angel and the Devil on your shoulder. Valmonica, that's what it's called. This might work for a deck like Valmonica. You know, if your cards go to the graveyard, you can just Pendulum Summon into those cards in your graveyard. Of course, not your Link monsters, but other than that, you know. So, okay, cool. Starting off with King Summoning. You know what? I think I do like King cards. I think King cards are fun. I think... I've said before that if you have to give yourself a specific type of cap, that is probably not a good thing. But I think for stuff like this, where you're trying to be like, here's a powerful card, but you can't, you know, go overboard with it, I think that's a really good example of how to utilize capping something. Moving on, we have one that I have been very excited to show off, Time Leap monsters. So, unfortunately, unlike King Summoning, these don't have the most coherent of rules, so I'm going to try and interpret them the best that I can. So here we go. A Time Leap monster is a monster type located in the extra deck. Instead of levels, they have futures. They are summoned from the extra deck by meeting certain requirements and banishing monsters you control. They give an example here for this card, which we'll take a look at later. But the example is, to summon this monster, you must banish a machine type monster that is 1 level lower than its future, while your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand. I have an issue with this example, and I'll talk about it when we get into the card. There are other restrictions as well. You may only time leap summon once per turn. If a time leap monster would be sent to the graveyard, it gets time banished instead. Time banished monsters are face-up banished monsters who are treated as face-down banished cards for the effects of cards like DDR or Burial from a different dimension, but can be normally interacted with by non-specific effects using the banish zone. That's a little confusing, but I think I understand what they're saying. So let's take a look at Time Gear Time Gate Dragon. So here we go, we have Time Gate Dragon. It's a 5 future card. So here's the issue that I have with the example that they gave. The time leap is that your opponent has 2 or more cards in hand and that you have a machine type monster, but it does not explicitly state that you have to, what did it say? Hang on. That you have to banish a machine type monster that is 1 level lower than its future. The card does not say that. I suppose you could take this dash. I can't show. I suppose you can take the dash in between hand and machine type to mean that that's what that means. But other than that, this card does not say that. There is no way a person would be able to know that unless that is the latent thing, that you have to get rid of a monster that's 1 level lower. That could make sense. I could see that working out. But that's not explicitly what the rules say, and that gives me pause to believe that other cards might have different restrictions. If that is true, I feel like that could be changed. You should be able to workshop that. But if it's not true and it is just getting rid of the type of monster that is 1 level less, I think that works pretty well. So it's just a little bit of something to really enunciate in your rules there, if that makes sense. Moving on, let's actually look at the effect. Once per turn, you can discard 1 card. Your opponent chooses 1 of their cards and returns it to the bottom of the deck. I assume that they mean 1 of the cards that they control, which is fine, it's just a little bit of a wording issue. During the end phase, time banish this card, and if you do, immediately after this effect resolves, special summon a monster used to time leap this turn from your banish zone. So the wording's a little bit confusing, not only with the card, but with the way in which this works, but for the most part, I understand it. I think time gears are interesting, or I should say time leap cards. I think they are interesting. I do think you could probably make an entire card game where time is a mechanic, and I think it would be interesting if implemented correctly. With the way in which time leap monsters work, I feel like if they were refined a little bit better, they could work really, really well in Yu-Gi-Oh! With the way that they are currently being sold, I do not think they work super well simply because they're just slightly confusing, if you understand my meaning. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already confusing enough without stuff like this being introduced. I feel like for the creator of Time Leap, I feel like you should just refine it just a tiny bit more. It doesn't need too much. I think they work really, really well. You just need to tweak it just that much. You know what I'm saying? Overall, I enjoy Time Leap. I think Time Leap is fun and interesting. I'm always going to like time cards. I think in the second fan-made mechanics video, we looked at Chronos cards or something. I loved those cards. I like cards that have to do with time and how they are removed from things and stuff like that. I feel like this is a kind of different example of how time can be used. So I think it's fun. Moving on, we have my final one here, and this one, as far as I am aware, does not have any pictures, but if they do, we will find them. This is Mobile Monsters. I found this one, I thought it was interesting, and let's take a look. Mobile Monsters are a class of monsters that go in the extra deck. They have levels as a strength indicator as well as attack and defense. Interesting. For summoning them, you need 1 monster that has been moved in position on the field to a different location. So, as it says here, think in cards like Senate Switch that allow you to move a monster. I think this is interesting because this is something that Konami has tried to introduce into Yu-Gi-Oh! A couple times, moving your monster's positions on the field. It works for a couple of archetypes, and I feel like Mobile Monsters just kind of utilize that a bit more. Moving on, a mobile monster that has not been previously summoned by means of a mobile summon cannot be summoned in a special way from the graveyard, as it happens with monsters of Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, etc. So, I think this means, much like most extra deck monsters, you know, if you summon a mobile monster but you don't actually do a mobile summon with it, you cannot Monster Reborn it back because it wasn't summoned properly the first time. Mobile monsters coming from the extra deck can only be summoned in the main monster zone if there is a link. Okay, so it utilizes link monster rules. There is no limit of mobile monsters in the extra deck. Okay, that's a little bit of a weird distinction, specifically because there's not really a limit to how many types of any monster in the extra deck there is. You know, there's just the limit of the extra deck. The only thing I could see is if they were trying to say that mobile monsters break the limit of the extra deck, which I don't think is wise, but I don't think that that's what they're trying to say here. So it doesn't look like there are any mobile monster cards, at least as far as I could see. So we're just going to take a look at the examples that they provided here. They provided Shark Pirate, a level 7 water fish mobile effect monster with 2500 attack and 1800 defense. Requires one rank 4 or lower water Xyz monster that was moved in 2 or more different locations. Quick effect, you can target one rank 4 or lower water Xyz monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and if you do, attach this card to that monster as a material. And if you do that, that monster gains 2500 attack and defense, but it cannot activate its effects the turn that it would be that would detach its own materials. That's a little bit of redundancy there, but that's okay. You can only use this effect of Shark Pirate once per turn. So as I said, there's a little bit of redundancy in the effect. That can just be shortened down. That's no big deal. I suppose I don't really have an issue with mobile monsters. I do wish they would utilize a little more of the movement-specific mechanics in their effects, but I can't really say that because we only have one example here for now. An issue that I do have is that mobile monsters do not work with Yu-Gi-Oh! As it works right now, because there's so little cards that actually move other cards on the field. I feel like it doesn't necessarily work all that much, you know what I'm saying? I think mobile monsters are interesting. I do not think they work in a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless Konami decides that they're going to work a little bit more on having archetypes move monsters in between zones, or even, if we're not talking archetypes, just having cards in general move between zones, because as of right now, as far as I'm aware, there's not many archetypes that do that, and not many cards outside of those archetypes that do that either. I believe right now Valence and maybe what is it, Gen X? Not Gen X. There is another archetype, I can't think of it right now. I refuse to look it up because I'm a professional. Anyway, point being, I do not think mobile monsters would work that well in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think you could make a card game that revolves around moving cards around that mobile monsters would work into, but I do not think they work that well for Yu-Gi-Oh! And there we have it. The Lionheart King VA types of summons. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every type of summons. I went through a little less than my last couple fan mechanic videos. I just kind of wanted to take a peek at this for the last video. And that is going to be it for fan mechanics. I have loved and enjoyed doing this series, and I'm going to love the next video I have to do that revolves around fan-made stuff. But it's not necessarily going to be one of these videos. Hopefully you'll see it in a couple weeks. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something to enjoy about this video. I have enjoyed looking at so many submissions, and I'm going to enjoy looking at so many more. I think that it is fun to come up with summoning mechanics for Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply because it, it could pave the way for someone making their own card game. It's also just fun to think about ways that you could mess with the game. That being said, once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, drink your water.